Folks, this is legal artistry in action. The prosecuting attorney on the Derek Chauvin trial on the right is cross-examining the pathology expert for Chauvin in defense on the left, and basically he's making him look really like a fellow who doesn't know what he's talking about. Watch.
Body's neck in the prone position, and the person is squeezed until they become responsive. And if that pressure is maintained for a minimum of 4 minutes, that can cause irreversible brain damage because the brain may be starved of oxygen. Is that true?
Once cessation of oxygen to the brain starts.
Dr. Fowler, my question was, is it true?
Would you please restate the question?
Yes, sir. If you apply pressure to someone's neck and squeeze until the person becomes unresponsive, and you maintain that pressure for at least 4 minutes, you will cause irreversible brain damage because you will have starved the brain of oxygen. Is that true?
Correct. It takes 4 minutes of no supply of oxygen to the brain to cause irreversible brain damage.
Now, if somebody dies as a result of the consequences of insufficient oxygen or low oxygen, we know that when that person dies, they're going to die of cardiopulmonary arrest because everybody dies of cardiopulmonary arrest. Fair enough?
Yes.
And if a person dies as a result of low oxygen, that person's also going to die ultimately of a fatal arrhythmia, right?
Correct. Every one of us in this room will have a fatal arrhythmia at some point.
Right, because that's kind of how you go.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the role of sort of physical activity, struggle, if you will, on the oxygen stores or reserves when somebody may be in the prone position. Do you agree that when somebody's involved in a pretty vigorous physical confrontation, they would certainly have what's referred to as an oxygen deficit?
Yes. Any kind of exertion, you build up a degree of lactic acid and other metabolites that need to be removed from the body, and the term oxygen debt is used more in the lay environment, but yes, you have some makeup to do.
And because you're using up your oxygen reserves then?
Somewhat, but it's also more generation of the metabolic byproducts from the actual activity as well.
Well, would you agree that somebody with an oxygen deficit who is involved in a vigorous physical confrontation would be more susceptible to positional asphyxia than would otherwise be the case? Do you agree with that?
Yes. It would be more difficult for them to regain their, to get rid of the metabolic byproducts of the activities that occurred before.
And would you agree then that a person with an oxygen deficit or a debt is more prone to any kind of asphyxia than a person completely at rest? Do you agree with that?
Yes, a fully oxygenated person at rest would certainly be at no risk of, or not no, but a substantially lower level of risk of an arrhythmia compared to somebody who has been exercised hard.
Now I'm going to stop it here. Prior to this, the expert pathology witness was trying to claim that George Floyd's heart attack had nothing to do with the knee on his neck. The prosecution just basically made a connection between Chauvin's putting his knee on George Floyd's neck, the heart attack that then followed, and his death. He expertly cut up the pathology so-called expert. Subscribe to Zennia62 and bookmark OaklandNewsNow.com. But in fairness to the pathology expert, if he were not an expert, he would not have answered honestly, and he did.